HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Forgiving Life, a pathway to overcoming resentment and creating a legacy of love. By Robert D. Enright, Ph.D. Read by George Newbern. Preface. Are you aware of the wounds in the world? If you pay attention to the evening news, you surely know of the wounds caused to the flesh. But I'm talking about another kind of wound, the emotional wound that is not so easily seen. Have you been aware of these lately in others? These unseen wounds are visible if you pay attention in people's facial expressions, in the language they choose to use, within the tensions they carry on them like heavy chains around their necks. The world is full of wounds. In 2001, I dedicated my book, Forgiveness is a Choice, to Nancy, with whom I have discovered the secret to a long and happy marriage. I dedicated that book to her while she lay in a hospital bed in our home. She was dying of a particularly hard-to-treat form of cancer. The secret that I referred to was our willingness to love each other in such a special way that we practiced forgiving each other for our all-too-human imperfections. Our love for each other, and then the loss of her, helped me to see deeper and farther than ever before. I saw more clearly the wounds that so many people carry inside of them every day. Some of those deep wounds come from life circumstances, as did Nancy's, mine, and our two sons' wounds when she was diagnosed with a fatal disease. Other internal wounds come from injustices inflicted on us by other people, from their own place of pain. We can do something about the incessant wounds of the world caused by injustice, I thought. Yet, we cannot be conquerors of so many wounds inflicted on us, and we cannot help others be conquerors if we consider only one injustice and forgive only one person. Over the years, I have mused about so many injustices caused by so many wounds, and I have realized that to go after all of this woundedness, we must go beyond practicing forgiveness to actually living the forgiving life. This entails forgiving, then forgiving some more, then learning to love this moral virtue until it becomes a part of us. The intent of this book is to bring you on this path to the door of the forgiving life. And through that door, so that you arrive home comfortable with forgiveness, trusting it, and thankful that it is in the world and a part of your life. It starts with understanding and then goes deeply into you as wisdom. It becomes not just a thing that is in you, but a part of the very fabric of the real you, the important you, the core you. And then you may want to give it away to others. This is where we are heading in this book. Am I exaggerating when I say that forgiveness is vital in this world? Desmond Tutu, the South African activist, said that there is no future without forgiveness, stating that in the title to one of his best-selling books. What did he mean? For one thing, he was reflecting on the history and the hope for South Africa as the country struggles with the wounds of apartheid and seeks a better way. Another of his points was that there are so many wounded people in his country that they need the medicine of forgiveness. Otherwise, they could head in an undesirable direction filled with resentment. Are you ready to begin the journey? We start in Chapter 1 with a brief description of what I call our theory of forgiveness. A theory is like a story in that it connects forgiveness to other important aspects of life, such as resentment, love, emotional well-being, and good relationships. A theory of forgiveness tells the story of how all of these issues interrelate and why forgiveness is important for you and the world. We discuss this theory in Chapter 2 with those of you who are listening to this book, because you have experienced a trauma. I want to speak with you in particular because your wounds are deep and need special attention. Chapters 3 through 6 introduce you to our pathway to forgiving, a pathway that I created and with my colleagues have studied and implemented since 1985. In Chapter 7, we take a little breather from the process to explore in depth what we mean when we say, "I forgive you." Chapter 8 presents you with an overall plan for approaching the complex process of forgiving all or most people who have ever been deeply unfair to you. In Chapter 9, you are given the opportunity to take a forgiveness test to see the degree to which you currently forgive these people. It will help you to decide whom to forgive first. Chapters 10 through 16 guide you through this forgiveness process, first with a member of your family of origin in which you grew up, and then with other important relationships. As you will see, we expand your world of forgiveness by including more and more people. In Chapter 16, you have a chance to step back, climb up on the summit, and view your accomplishments to this point in the book. Chapters 17 and 18 center on your helping children to forgive. And then I challenge you to consider giving forgiveness away to others in families, schools, workplaces, places of worship, and other groups. We end in Chapter 19 by my challenging you to consider your own legacy. What will you be leaving behind in this world? As you will hear in the chapters to follow, too many people leave their wounds, which end up wounding others, who then leave their own wounds to the next generation, and on it goes. If this is true, that people can leave a legacy of woundedness, is it not possible to imagine leaving goodness for generations to come? Consider the supernova, long since gone from the universe as it exploded, but continuing to provide light for those who take the time to look. What will you leave behind? This book is intended to help you decide that. Now, for your sake and for those you will meet after following the exercises in this book, let us begin to lead the forgiving life as we together confront and overcome your wounds resulting from others' injustices. My hope is for an exhilarating journey with emotional and relational healing for you and others as its endpoint. Part 1. The Basics. Chapter 1. A Theory of Forgiveness in Brief. What is the forgiving life, and why is it important? In this book, we approach the forgiving life like a pathway. But because its importance may take some time to emerge, let's start slowly with an analogy that illustrates a pathway you might have explored quite a bit in your life: a career. In our analogy, we'll follow a young woman named Inez, whose career path took a definite form early in her life, but whose pathway to forgiveness, as we'll hear in later chapters, was not so clear at first. Suppose that a young Inez, just out of secondary school, reads a story about a person who has spent 30 years as a service worker in a nursing home. The story is so inspiring that Inez decides to explore this possibility for herself of being in service to the elderly in a nursing home. Does the reading of the story and the inspiration that followed make her a service worker to the elderly? I know that your answer is no, of course not, but a more important question is, why? What does she need to be a service worker to the elderly in the true sense? Suppose further that Inez takes a course on nursing homes at her local community college and receives a grade of A for the course. Is she now a service worker to the elderly? Suppose she likes the course a great deal and makes plans for an advanced course in the area. Is she a service worker? Again, if you answer no, then what is missing? Now suppose that she goes back to college and gets a degree in social work, specializing in this area of care to the elderly by taking 5 courses on this and related topics. When others ask her what her major is, Inez, the college student, says, "Oh, I'm in service work to the elderly. I have a practicum in which I will be an assistant at a nursing home for 3 weeks." Now is Inez the scholar, a service worker to the elderly? Suppose she gets a doctoral degree in the area of social work, specializing in nursing home care and administration. Suppose that she has a 1-year internship in nursing home care. Now would you grant her the status of service worker to the elderly? What if Inez is hired at a well-known nursing home where she administrates, teaches the staff, and implements new ideas? Is she now more of a service worker to the elderly than when she majored in this area of specialization and received the doctorate? Why? Now, suppose we have two people who follow the same academic path to the same nursing home. Both are in the similar areas of administration, teaching, and innovation. The first person has a detached lack of interest in it all despite years of schooling. She would rather be hot air ballooning over Minneapolis. The other, Inez, remains engaged in the topic, thinking creatively about it, and engaging staff and residents in new ideas. Are they both service workers to the elderly in the same way? If not, why not? What are the major distinguishing features between them? I have asked you the questions in the previous paragraphs to bring home the following 6 important points about living the forgiving life. Listening to this book, if it is helpful to you, is a positive step. Yet this alone does not mean that you are living the forgiving life, especially if you finish it once and then sell it on an internet auction site. There is much more to it than that. You might listen to this book, for example, more out of curiosity than anything else. In other words, you may be peeking into the window of forgiveness without knocking on the door, entering and spending valuable quality time with it at home. Even if you have spent time in another book working on forgiving one person for one act of injustice, this does not necessarily mean that you are living the forgiving life. It would be easy to let all of the learning just drift away as the cares of the world or other distractions smother your interest in pursuit of a forgiving life. Even if you have forgiven 5 people, each for a serious unfairness, you may or may not be living the forgiving life. It is more than a series of forgiveness acts. You can do this kind of forgiving and never reflect on what you did. You can do this kind of forgiving and never let the action sink so deeply into you that you begin to say, "Forgiveness is a part of my life. It is a part of who I am." If you do begin to reflect on forgiveness and conclude that you like it, if you understand it, and if it is beginning to be a part of you, then I ask you to address this challenge. To what extent have you forgiven people from your past? To what extent have you forgiven people across family, workplace, and neighborhood? To what extent has forgiveness pervaded your life? Do you see that it is possible for you to make a commitment to putting forgiveness on the front burner of life, making it a high priority in your relationships from the past and in your current relationships across the various settings in which you live? In other words, can you see that it is possible for you to make forgiveness such a part of your identity that you may be able to say in the future, "I am a forgiving person"? Finally, do you see that it is possible to derive joy from making forgiveness a central part of who you are? When you do, your next question is likely to be this: how can I let others know of the deeper meaning and applications of forgiving so that we can have a better world? After contemplating these points, do you see that forgiveness is so much more than a one-time action toward one person who hurt you? Do you see that it is more than a series of actions? Are you seeing that forgiveness takes root when it goes down deep inside you and you willingly say yes to it? Are you seeing that forgiveness, starting from that position deep inside you, can be a lifestyle, a way of living peacefully with others in this imperfect world? Are you seeing that forgiveness can actually be a part of your very identity, a part of your core self? Are you seeing that the love of forgiveness can lead you to helping others acquire this virtue? All of this is what I mean by the forgiving life. A theory of forgiveness. If we are to live the forgiving life, it might help to know why. Why bother? Why is it difficult to live such a life? If I refuse to live such a life, will there be unfavorable consequences for me? If so, why would that be? If I live the forgiving life, what is likely to be the outcome for me and others? Why are these outcomes likely? Social scientists tend to explain the whys of whatever interests them by formulating theories. A theory basically tells you a story, not a fable, but a story that links a variety of issues together that can be tested to see if it is true. Our theory starts with the premise that all people need to both give and receive love to be healthy and to have psychologically healthy families and communities. I am not alone in this view when we study the ancient literature, going back to the formation of the Hebrew nation thousands of years ago with the command to love one's neighbor as oneself. I am not alone when we turn to modern-day heroes such as Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, or Mother Teresa. Unconditionally loving others, despite the blemishes and faults that each of these heroic people had, was at the heart of their message. I am not alone in this view when we consult modern philosophy, in which Jean Autke has shown the centrality of love for morally good human interaction. I am not alone in this view of the primacy of love when we examine the earliest roots of psychology, going back over a century to the pioneering work of the psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud, who made the famous statement that each person's purpose is to work and to love if genuine mental health will result, a theme that continues to resonate with psychoanalysts in the 21st century. Contemporary social scientists such as Thomas Lewis, Faria Mini, and Richard Lannon make the compelling biological case that love is at the central core of who we are as humans. I continue not to be alone in this view when I ask people of good common sense about what is of the utmost importance to them. All people require love, both the giving and the receiving of love. This is not an option. On this issue, some people who use the method of religious faith to understand the world, some who use the method of deductive logic and philosophical analysis, some who use the method of psychoanalysis, and some who use the method of modern biological and social science are in agreement. The essence of our humanity is to love and to be loved. Of course, we can think of the essence of humanity in other ways. For example, it would be accurate to characterize humans as rational beings, as Aristotle did. His idea is intriguing because only humans can understand logical deductions, work crossword puzzles, or discern what a basketball, golf ball, and frisbee all have in common. We are rational, a unique characteristic of us as humans, but I claim, along with Lewis, Amini, and Lannon, that our rationality is not at the core of who we are. This is true simply because we can use our rationality for some very inappropriate ends. Tyrants have been known to use their rational brilliance for the development of sinister war strategies. Bank robbers are usually quite rational in their approach to hauling away the goods, that is, if they wish to avoid capture. Rationality is vital for us, don't get me wrong on that. It separates us from species lower in the hierarchy because we alone, as humans, deliberately and consciously pursue truth. Rationality can aid our understanding of who we should be to one another, thus aiding us in pursuing what is morally good. But it does not seem to be the primary theme when we ask what is at our core. Rather than focus on rationality, it is probably more accurate to say that the essence of our humanity is tied to our ability to make free choices. We are not bound by instinct. Free will makes us human. Yet, as in the case of rationality, our free will does not seem to be the bottom-line essence of who we are as persons because some take liberty with that free will for ill-gotten gain. For example, a person may choose to skip work when the surf is up at Malibu, or choose to leave his or her partner of 15 years simply because I choose to do so. As with rationality, free will can be very unloving, even exploitative of others. Many philosophers, starting with Immanuel Kant, a preeminent Western thinker, have emphasized a goodwill as good in itself and therefore the foundation of who we are as moral beings. If we desire the moral good for each other, then our interactions, for the most part, will come out fine. We will have a good society. Yet although a good will is essential, even it seems too small a candidate for what is absolutely and centrally at the core of our being. Inez might have a very good will because she intends to eventually work in a nursing home for the sake of helping others, by first taking courses, then getting a degree, and later an advanced degree. Yet without a strong will, one that motivates her to strive toward this goal, her good will may not lead to the good career if she lacks perseverance to actually secure it. And if a person has a good will coupled with a strong will without the wisdom to create goodness in the world with that good and strong will, it amounts to little. Perhaps something that is produced by goodwill, which benefits humankind in a consistent and meaningful way, is the key to our search for the bottom line essence of our humanity. What might that be? It would have to be something that is rational, it makes sense, is not forced on us, it comes from a free will, is inherently good, it comes from a good will, and can realistically be done for good in the world, comes from a strong will. Love, properly understood, reaches higher and goes farther in explaining who we are compared with rationality, free will, and even goodwill. According to Aristotle, there are 4 different kinds of love. The natural love that exists, for example, between a mother and her child, storge in Greek. The love that develops strongly among friends, philia. The love that is forged between romantic partners, eros. And a 4th love, agape, that is based on service to others, developed more fully in medieval times by Thomas Aquinas. The first 3 kinds of love, storge, philia, and eros, depend for their proper expression on agape, or service love, loving even when you do not feel like it, loving when you are tired, loving when the other seems unlovable. C.S. Lewis, who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, made this point of the philosophical centrality of agape. Agape, according to Lewis, is the highest form of love precisely because it nobly and courageously perseveres when the other kinds of love say, "Ouch, I'm out of here, run." With agape love, a person chooses to love even when it hurts. In other words, it comes from a free will, we choose it, and from both a good will, we choose it to help others even if we are uncomfortable, and a strong will, we do not run away from and carry on despite the difficulty. And it makes sense coming from a position of rationality. Agape love has an inherent goodness within it that is missing from rationality and free will. Further, without a sense of love that is deliberately in service to others, all of the other loves can be distorted and not be inherently good in themselves. Take eros as an example. Is it the best kind of romantic relationship when the partner degenerates into a what's-in-it-for-me pattern? Agape balances the tendency in eros to seek one's own pleasure primarily and says instead, "How may I serve you?" Agape is a kind of love that has dignity, quiet, and strength as it seeks to build up and even restore others. Agape helps us to see others as possessing inherent worth, a quality that is not earned. The paradox of agape in the context of forgiveness is that as a person reaches out to others who have been unjust, that person experiences considerable emotional healing, as we discuss in the next chapter. I used the word balance in the previous paragraph. Balance was an important idea for Aristotle, who called it temperance. Each expression of love, whether it is a storge, agape, or another variety, itself needs balance unless it becomes distorted by overdoing or underdoing it. For example, if people distort agape by begrudgingly overdoing it, they could perform supposed acts of love with deep resentment, deplete their own reserves, or burn out without being able to love well at all. If people underdo agape, their efforts may be half-hearted, even indifferent, as they perform this lazy distortion of agape. The point is to strive for a good, solid expression of service love without overdoing it or underdoing it. Wisdom helps us to know how much is enough. Love, then, in the form of agape, may be the most fundamental and the most important aspect of our being for this one reason. It is inherently good in that, by its definition, we seek meaningful and healthy relationships with others, and therefore it is good for others and for us. All other virtues by themselves do not necessarily fulfill any lasting connection between and among people. Justice by itself can be a rather cold virtue, as, say, a magistrate almost indifferently sentences a person as a rightful punishment for a crime. Courage by itself can be a grim duty, as, say, a soldier goes to battle because he is ordered to do so. If the need for meaningful connections is part of our religious, ethical, psychological, and biological essence, then agape love is central to that essence. If the fulfillment of meaningful connections is part of our endpoint as human beings, then the mature understanding and expression of agape love is a major part of that endpoint, or what philosophers call our summum bonum, or greatest good to which we strive. Lewis, Amini, and Lannon made the scientific case that we must have love from others and must give love to others if we are to thrive in our humanity. Otherwise, the combination of our rationality, free will, goodwill, and strong will can and may be misdirected away from what is good. When others either fail to love us or withdraw that love, because it is so vital to us all, we tend to feel pain. The greater the removal of love, the greater the pain a person might experience. The longer and more intensively that love is removed, the longer the road to recovery might be. This scientifically testable idea leads us to the following 7 subplots to our story about love and its importance to people through the practice of forgiveness. First, when other people withdraw love from us, we might develop resentment. After all, we do not deserve unfair treatment, and we do require love. Not from all, but at least from some. Resentment occurs when anger not only comes to visit, but sits down in our hearts, takes off its stinky shoes, and makes itself too much at home. After a while, we do not know how to ask it to leave. Although some anger might be good, persistent and intensive anger that is resentment is not healthy. It can distort in the short run how we think as we dwell on the negative, what we think as we have specific condemning thoughts, and how we act, reducing our will to act in a morally good way. Second, as we continually live with love withdrawn from us and a resulting resentment, with the short-term consequences of thinking with a negative pattern, thinking specific condemning thoughts and acting poorly, we can settle into a kind of long-term distortion of who the love-withdrawing person is, who we ourselves are, and who people are in general. The basic issue here is that once love is withdrawn from us, we can begin to withdraw a sense of worth toward the one who hurt us. The conclusion is that he or she is worthless. Over time, we can drift into the dangerous conclusion that I too am worthless, and after all, others have withdrawn love from me and have concluded that I lack worth, therefore I do lack worth. Even later, we can drift into the unhealthy conclusion that there is no love in the world, and so no one really has any worth. Thus, everyone is worthless. As a third subplot, if the theory is correct, that the essence of our humanity is agape love in our minds, hearts, and actions, then we need to take seriously this caution. If love remains outside of us for a very long time, this can do damage to our emotions and to our relationships with many different people in our lives. In a sense, the connections that we formerly had with good people can become broken, and we become disconnected with a variety of other people. We see this over and over in the published literature. The book Helping Clients Forgive presents scientific and clinical evidence of damaged emotions and relationships when love is withdrawn from people. A fourth subplot within our theory is that resentment can be displaced onto others not involved in the original offense. For example, when a mother withdraws love from her daughter, let's call her Katerina, then in her resentment, Katerina might withdraw love from her brother. The brother, in turn, might then take out his resentment on other boys in school. When these young people grow up, they might pass the resentment to their partners and to their children, who then pass it along to their children. Do you see the potential for a domino effect of disconnection? This is the point Gandhi was making when he stated that if we keep taking an eye for an eye, then eventually the whole world will be without sight. In our theory of forgiveness, this happens because love has been withdrawn from people who do not take the time to restore that love within their own hearts. They in turn withdraw love from others, which leads to relational disconnection. And on it goes. Are you beginning to see why I've entitled this book The Forgiving Life? It is a life that can restore connections within the self, within the family.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?